So, good day, everyone. Today I'm going to chop it up with Donald C. Note Hooker. He's an award-winning visual artist, a performer, a poet who gets compared to Tupac often, and America's or the world's most prolific prisoner rap artist. So, the king of hip hop, so to speak. So, Donald, thank you for allowing me to ask you some questions. How are you feeling today?
I am feeling excellent as always. I try to, and please call me C Note.
Gotcha. Okay, C Note. So we see a still photo of you. You are holding some art pieces. Can you maybe tell me a little bit what's going on in the picture?
Those pictures were taken in 2016 during me putting on being part of a prison play called Redemption in Our State of Blues. There was a photographer there. I'm holding my first artwork on the left of the prison bars and the rolls.
Hmm.
And the second one I probably did 6 years or 5 years later. I call the sequel to the one on the left. The one on the left is called My Dilemma. I was in a very,
Hmm.
very messed up prison here in California. I'm in a California prison system. I've been in prison for going on 25 years um,
Hmm.
under California's draconian three strikes law. So I'm in this prison, the worst prison in the state of California. It's isolated. It's high in the Sierra Nevada mountains. They say Bigfoot, the Yeti, uh, is there. So anyway, there's nothing beautiful there. It's just four walls, and it's
Mm.
isolated. And so I was driven out of madness. That's how. That's so. No one talks about people who are creators creating art out of frustration.
Hmm.
Everybody talks about art that is created out of inspiration, and that work was created out of frustration. I believe that. I think her name is Taylor Swift. From my
Oh
understanding, I
yeah.
don't listen to her music, but from my understanding, a lot of her works, art songs, are created out of frustration out of
That's
relationships with her. Yes.
exactly, that's what she says. And I'm a Dutch person. I live in the Netherlands, so I'm not that familiar with all the laws in California. Can you maybe explain the free strike law?
Oh, the three strikes law is
Mm-hmm.
if littering was a felony, that will put you in prison for the rest of your natural life. If you committed some crimes in your past, it doesn't matter how long ago. It could have been 50 years ago. It could have been when you were a teenager and you're now in your
Mm-hmm.
60s. So the issue is any felony. So shoplifting will put you in prison for the rest of your natural life. If littering was a felony, it would put you in prison for the rest of your natural life. Back
Mm.
then, marijuana use was a felony. Selling it or whatever was a felony. So the other piece to the right is of a woman looking outside of prison bars, and the name of that piece is called M Prison, and it's part two to the first work is called My Dilemma. My dilemma was there was no beauty uh, in my world. And My Dilemma uses traditional, that's the one with the prison bars and the rows. My Dilemma uses traditional prison art, which is done with ink pens. And then it followed a European by the name of Leonardo da Vinci. He has a technique called sumatu, something of that nature. And so the rose kind of follows that. My personal, Cino's personal favorite artworks is European Renaissance.
But to start at the beginning, in a way, for people who are not familiar with prison culture, prison art, and of course the king of prison hip hop, I read in an e-news article that you are that people also refer to you as the American A Weiwei. I'm not sure if I pronounce his word, his name in the right manner, but could you maybe explain why they compare you to that person and who that person is?
In a Google search,
Mm-hmm.
a Google inquiry was who is America's most prolific prisoner artist, and Google's response was a former Chinese prisoner and dissident, Ai Weiwei. And for some odd reason, I was behind him. Number two in the search inquiry. I felt I felt so elated to be in the same search inquiry or right next to, this artist. But at the same time, I was messed up in the head because the Google search inquiry was who is America's most prolific prisoner artist. Why would a Chinese national pop up number one? Well, it was near a time that he was in China, but here in the United States, a famous prison of ours called Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
It held a prisoner by the name of Al Capone, famous Chicago alcohol runner during Prohibition here in the United States. So anyway, our Guantanamo Bay in the 20th century was this prison called Alcatraz outside of the city of San Francisco. It's Sean O'Connor or Sean Connery of the famous James, some of the first James Bond movies. He made a movie called The Rock, where him and some other guys escaped from off this island, federal prison island. And so Ai Weiwei, some Americans held an art exhibit of his work, and it included people such as Eric Snowden was a part of that work. I think Nelson Mandela was a part of that work. Yeah. And some Chinese dragons and this, that, and other. So I believe the reason why he came up first in that search inquiry was because he just recently had an exhibit on Alcatraz Island. And eventually I will follow in his footsteps and also be able to participate in having be a part of a prison art collective that was showing on the island of Alcatraz.
Could you maybe explain a little bit about art culture behind the prison wall?
Art culture in the United States behind the prison wall is not really. So the Tate Museum in the UK identifies underground art as being graffiti art, like what Banksy does, street art, digital art, and comic book stripe art. Yeah. So we know that graffiti art, because one of the guys I follow, he's a street artist, but he passed away. His name is Keith Haring. He might have done work.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Right. So, I didn't know this, but at the time I learned that the origins of the graffiti art movement, the person who they identify, his name is Daryl Cornbread McCrae, who started the graffiti art movement here in the United States, in Philadelphia, and then it moved up north to New York. He learned all this while he was in a juvenile prison. The gang members in a juvenile prison would strike up on the wall, put up write their names, write their gang stuff. And so he was given a nickname in there called Cornbread. And he was the only person who was not a non-gang member who was allowed to graffiti write his name on the prison walls. He got out of the little juvenile prison when he was in what we call not high school, but junior high school. Mm-hmm. And he got to, he liked this girl, and he said he got to write on the walls everywhere, Cornbread loves Kim, if that was her name. I don't remember her name. Yeah, Cornbread loves Kim, and he was writing all over the world, all over the place, and he got Kim. That became his girlfriend. So one day, yes. So one time they had a killing in Philly, and the papers misprint and said that the person who died was Cornbread, who be writing all over the place. So he went on a graffiti run saying cornbread lives, cornbread lives. The Jacksons, the Jackson Fives at the time, they were still together. In
Yeah.
1974, put up in the Philadelphia airport. He spray painted on that cornbread lives. One day, he eventually jumped over the elephant enclosure at the Philadelphia Zoo and spray painted on an elephant, cornbread lives.
On the elephant.
Yes. So graffiti started in prison.
Nice. And what is one of the biggest misconceptions of art in prison?
So what people do understand about American prison art is its influence. So back in 2004, the Republican Party was electing or nominating President Bush to run again for their party nominee. His daughter got on stage during this convention, shaking a Polaroid camera, shaking a Polaroid picture, talking about shake it like a Polaroid picture. Well, this was from Outkast song, Hey Ya. To see these, I didn't understand the influence of these young white women relating to this black culture out of the South. There's this black rap song, but not only were they on stage doing that, they were saying this to what some would say is a bunch of stogie politicians, so who aren't predominantly of color. So that opened my eyes to that American prison culture influences American street culture. American street culture influences American popular culture, and American popular culture influences global culture. So the pop line of cultural influence here in the United States can start and is likely to start from prison because of the symbiotic relationship between street culture and prison culture. Because let's just take street culture. Let's take a 1990s rap, which was heavily talking about street culture. What those guys, some of those guys, if not the rappers, but the communities they come from, they was put people in prison.
Yeah.
So when Nas in, I think the early 2000s or late, whenever Nas made a album called Is Hip Hop Dead? Well, hip hop to me did not. Hip hop went to prison. So that culture, that street culture went inside the prisons.
Yeah.
And the people that's in those prisons, they get out. You go to jail, you're going to get out. You go to prison, you're going to get out. And that culture then affects street culture.
Yeah. And do you think the general public is aware of that? And I want to point out two things. First, do you think that the general public understands the relationship between prison culture and hip hop culture, because hip hop culture is still being stigmatized? And second, do you think that prison culture gets enough credit for all the influence it has?
First of all, prison culture absolutely does not give credit for its influence. That's a fact. Prison hip hop culture is being stigmatized. However, hip hop has, when we talk about the party in August of, I think it was 73, hip hop's 4 elements. I know they throw in a 5th one called knowledge, but hip hop's original elements consisted of graffiti, DJing, with the turntables, MCing, which would be rap, and b-boy dancing. That's 4 different artistic disciplines. Hip hop is the greatest art form in the history of human existence. The next would be during the Baroque era. So with hip hop, you have multiple points of entry. Here in the United States, they had a Broadway play called Hamilton. I think his name is, I don't know his real name, something Manuel.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So what was and this was a success. You know, we call Broadway here in the United States is called the Great White Way. The reason why it's called a Great White Way, because I had to investigate it, was because of its lights. But it did, you know, blacks or African Americans or people of color really was not a place for them. It was not welcoming for them historically. Broadway here in the United States, in New York. Mm-hmm. So hip hop through Emmanuel's Hamilton invaded the Great White Way. So, let me just, we're speaking on a very, very historical day. Absolutely, hip hop was stigmatized, but it is the Jay-Z's, the Ice-T's, the Ice Cubes, the Dr. Dre's, because not only was hip hop stigmatized, hip hop had to break barriers. I mean, LL Cool J had to fight to get to be recognized to the Grammys, this, that, and the other. Well, today, this day, February 13th in 2022, I think in 1989, the the FBI here in the United States wrote to Ruthless Records, first time in the history of music, upset that NWA made this record called Fuck the Police. This has never happened. Law enforcement get involved because of speech, because of some musicians create a record. This letter is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Today, this day, February 13th, 2022, in the United States, they're about to have the biggest sporting event of its kind in Los Angeles, where I'm from, the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl halftime performance will include Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Mary J. Blige, and others, Eminem. But Ice Cube and Dr. Dre was a part of NWA. Yeah. Niggas with attitude. Do you think they imagine? Because I grew up listening to that music in the early in the 80s. That the same people that FBI was saying shut these people down will one day be at the biggest sporting event, you know, entertaining the world at the biggest sporting event. To go from that to the Super Bowl, that's the power of the hip hop hustle, the hip hop grind. What people don't understand, the greatest marketers ever, I don't want to say ever, but I maybe can argue ever, comes out of the hip hop world. We had to grind this out to blow it up.
That is so true. But what would you say, before we get into your artwork, what would you say to people who may argue that modern day rap music, or even like rap music from the 90s, has a bad influence on young people and may persuade them to also pursue a quote unquote gangster life?
I can't get off into that, because I argue, because I grew up in gang. I'm from the Crips. So I watch because Snoop Dogg is from the Crips out of Long Beach. I watch because black people are not criminal people. That's not our nature. But but it's with any group of people. If you do not have economic opportunity, you're going to have to get involved in what's called a illegal or black market or the underground economic system. So when the Crips in Long Beach, where Snoop Dogg is from, saw that Snoop Dogg was able to feed his family and give his family access to the middle class, I've seen these people who were predisposed to sell drugs, rob people, refuse to pick up dope sacks or pick up pistols, and instead picked up ink pens to write rap songs. Another gentleman by the name of Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle got his money in making music. Another Crip, making music. He took that money and opened up distressed properties in his community to make some money, open up centers for young kids, tech centers, These is what the younger generation put their eyeballs on and say, hey, this person was able to make money legally, hustle legally, feed their family, and given access to the middle and upper class legally. Black culture, whether it's jazz or whatever, that's where the African Americans are going to turn to, not the crime aspect of it, because no one wants to deal with, you sell drugs, you're going to go to jail. You sell drugs, you're going to get robbed. You go do robberies, you might get shot. So given those opportunities, those are lifestyle choices for the vast majority of people that's involved in them, out of lack of resources. So, not only is prisoners stignified, but being of color. So to be able to, as a black prisoner, as a black person, to be able to plant my flag there, we did one article say black prisoner invades the tech world.
Wow.
Because I have a billboard. So I did, one of my works is called Incarceration Nation. It's a image of the 48 contiguous states with prison bars going through it. That's on a billboard, with the name, with the title C-Note. They call him the Billboard Banksy. And so I got another one up. It just recently went down of one of my works by the name of Colored Girl. That was another one of my first works of art. Again, not being isolated, not being to see you beautiful black women, drove me to use a image out of a magazine of a black African-American celebrity. And I wasn't confident of my artwork, probably still not. And I don't tell nobody who was the image of this work, but everybody loves it. And so
there are some speculations, right? Like I heard the name Janet Jackson, maybe Vanessa Williams, maybe Halle Berry. Some people are, guessing what celebrity it is, right?
Yes. It depends. What I found interesting, what era in life are you from? Would be the person you think it is. The older you are, you throwing the older woman. The younger you are, you throwing a younger woman in your generation. So I just found that very funny.
It is. It definitely is. So I do want to go a little. Oh, sorry. Yes, continue, please.
Yeah. So I just want to briefly say. So I then turned that work into a digital work of art, where I copied Andy Warhol's a work that he did on Marilyn Monroe, and created one of his works was four pictures of Marilyn Monroe. I created the 4 pictures of that same image called Color Girl Warhol, after Andy Warhol. That picture also made it to a billboard in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And we zoned it and all that. Yes.
That's very creative and inspiring, and it also has like a societal, relevancy. So there's no need to be insecure about your artwork, but it's probably something that's in your own mind. I cannot help you with that, I guess. Thanks again for taking the time to talk to me and kind of inform also the European audiences, the Dutch audiences. Before I let you go, can you tell us where we can find you?
So there's a website, www.cnote.org. And it has all my works as a poet, as a playwright, as a performing artist, as a painter, and tells my story in depth. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, C-Note. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know it's like 10 a.m. over there in the United States or in California. Over here it's 7 p.m. So you'd still have a lovely Sunday ahead of you. And enjoy Valentine's Day tomorrow as well.
You also, and if you can, I invite you to, I might be too late for you, to watch our Super Bowl halftime special, which will be Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Mary J. Blige, and Eminem.
Yes, I know. I'm ready for that one. I've been waiting for that one for months now, so I'm definitely going to watch. No problem.
Okay, Kimmy, you have a wonderful and blessed day and Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Bye, C-Note.